us?
I'm not sure that I know it in Hawaiian, but I'll do the best I can. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
To the flag
of the United States of America.
And to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with
with
liberty and justice for all.
under God, indivisible, justice for all. Perfect. Thank you, Councilman. Okay, next item of business is Councilman report. So would you like to give us a report from Hawaii, Councilman Romack?
Things are very damp, wet, green, and beautiful. And wish you all could be here sometime, but not today.
Well, we appreciate you being here. Councilman Donahue, do you have a report?
I do not have a report. I'm just not on video because like you, I came back from vacation and I'm not willing to put on lipstick and earrings. So cheers, I'm here. Nothing to report.
Yeah, I struggle with the lipstick thing. All right, thank you, Councilman Donahue. Who else do we have here? We have Councilman Maynard Watson. Everybody's in a different line, so I can't see anybody in any particular order. So, Councilman Maynard Watson, how are you?
Good, thank you. I'm doing fine. It's been kind of quiet here with everybody out of town. But I will give you some feedback. I've run into several people who have given us some positive feedback on the police presence and are pleased with our additional more visibility, greater visibility. So kudos to them for that.
Okay, thank you for your report. I guess that takes us to the Vice Mayor.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I don't have anything. Thank you.
All right. I just want to report on one thing then, and that is the breaking of dirt or moving of dirt for the city center. I have to tell everyone here that it is tremendously fulfilling to see that brick wall down, even though we weren't able to save every brick and sell it to somebody. It's just wonderful that brick wall is down and gone, and that we actually are moving some dirt around in the city center towards the goal of actually building something in the next year or so. So for all of you who've worked so hard on this council and all the staff, you guys have done a great job, and it's a very big step for our city to see this development finally start. With that, I want to turn it over to the Vice Mayor and Nancy Schaefer from the Litchfield Park Historical Society. I don't know if Nancy's here. I don't see her name up. Nancy, are you here or not here?
Mayor, she is not here, but I know she texted.
Okay, it looks like there's no Nancy. So
she did text Lisa and Matthew and I just to say she had nothing to report. So I'll report that.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I just have the agenda with her name, and I assumed that she was going to be here. So with that, we'll go on to the city manager's report. Mr. Williams.
Mayor and Vice Mayor, you have the report in your council packet. I don't have anything special to highlight. I would welcome any questions if there are any.
Okay, any questions for the city manager? Yeah, I don't see any, so we'll move on then to response to the call of the community. There were no requests to speak at last meeting's call of the community, so there's no response. Ms. Roth, do we have any requests to speak or any questions from the community for this meeting's call of the community?
Mayor, we do not.
All right, so then we'll move on. Next item of business is a proclamation, which is in your packet concerning Child Support Month, Child Support Awareness Month. I'm not going to add anything to what's in the proclamation other than to just highlight the fact that it is tremendously important that we each take responsibility, both financially and morally or emotionally, for the children that we are that we bear and that we're responsible for. So this is it's important to remember that this month is highlighting that feature, and it is a tremendous issue within various parts of our society where that's not happening, and the children are suffering from it. So please keep that in mind as we go through this month. That brings us now to our report section, Goodyear Fire Department. It says we have Chief Wayne here. Let's see. It's always, oh, no, we have Chief Tom Cole here, it looks like.
Sir, can you hear me okay?
Or not.
Can you hear me, Mayor?
Yes. Yes.
We have changed some schedules around. Chief Louisi is enjoying.
I can hear you, but you can't hear me.
I can hear you, sir. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
So Chief Louisi's on his annual vacation in Massachusetts, and Chief Wayne's covering him, so I'm covering Chief Wayne. It's kind of a three-card Monty here. So our report for Litchfield Park fire response, fire and EMS response for the month of June 2021. We had a total of 63 calls in Litchfield Park, which is down from last year's number of 69. I think it's kind of noteworthy. Our total overall is down 6 calls from last year. So we're really on kind of a plateau as far as call volume is concerned. In June, the bulk of our calls were EMS in nature, 53 of those. 2 hazardous condition calls. One of those was an odor call, the other an alarm. 1 other call for service, 4 good intent calls, and then 3 false alarms. Look through the nature of the calls, nothing really noteworthy in most of those. So when we look at how we measure up.
Okay, any questions from council?
Yes, sir, it was pretty routine month, so don't have a lot of extras to report. We're very proud to be serving the citizens of Litchfield Park, and thank you for the opportunity to report out.
Thank you for your service to our community, and we appreciate all of it. Are there any questions from council of Chief Cole? I don't see any, but my screen is almost entirely blank other than people's names. So I'm going to assume that there's no one raising their hand to speak, and we're going to say thank you for providing your report, Chief, and we look forward to your service to our community as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Next item up is a report. Next item up is a report concerning our police activity. It says from MCSO, but I would be surprised if we had an MCSO rep here. Do we have a police report from anyone, Mr. City Manager?
Mr. Mayor, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay. Yes, sir. We do have a report in the binder from MCSO. This will be the last report from MCSO because they are the month before. That is why you see that report from MCSO, not from Avondale. We do have Assistant Chief Espinosa's on the line with us from Avondale as well. Should anyone have any questions for Avondale PD?
Welcome to Chief Espinosa. I appreciate you being here. My only question is, how has this progressed from your standpoint? How is the Avondale transition progressed in terms of your ability to serve our community.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. We're having a great time. The transition was pretty smooth. Our officers are enjoying their time here with our residents here in Litchfield Park. So no issues or concerns at this time.
Well, that's good. I've heard many positive comments about your presence here, and I've actually seen the Avondale Litchfield Park police car multiple times, which it used to be a big event to see a police car. So I appreciate the fact that we see your officer patrolling our community on a regular basis. So that's all good. Any questions from council for Chief Espinoza? And I probably gave you a promotion there, Chief.
Thanks, sir.
I don't see any questions, so thank you for your service. Please let your men and women know that we appreciate their service to our community.
Will do, sir. Thank you.
Okay, next item is a report from our, thank you. For some reason, our connection has got more of a delay than normal. So I guess we'll all have I guess it's probably because everyone here has their picture turned off. And so I feel very odd talking to you all as a blank screen, but we will progress, and I hope my internet connection stays stable. The next item up is a finance report. Ms. Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight I have a pretty short finance update because we just ended the fiscal year on June 30th, and it takes about 2 months to get the year completely closed out. So tonight I just have a sales tax update through June. So our retail sales, they were down 4% over June of 2020. Not surprising with everybody buying more than usual at this time last year. But they were up 46% over 2019. So I think that's really good to see that. Then our restaurant and bars are up 64% over 2020, but also 38% over 2019. I think 2019 is a good benchmark during these COVID months. Utilities are up 11% over last year. Rentals are up 28%. And then the other category that we can't disclose all the details, it's up 104% over 2020 and 58% over 2019. So a lot of the tourism related are included in that. So that's really good to see that. Construction is down 79% over last year, but that's not surprising with that issue we had with that contractor. The contractor has told me they have filed all the amended reports, but it hasn't processed yet. So that $790,000 is still remaining that they'll be refunded. Overall, our sales tax was 18% over 2020 and then 44% over 2019. And that is all I have for the sales tax update, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, do we have any questions from anyone on the council? Okay, I don't see any. I can only see, there we go, I can see everybody again. I can't see you because all I have is, I don't have any pictures, but I don't hear anyone from council with a question, so thank you for your report, Ms. Peterson. Next item up is an update on the city center, Mr. Scouten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So as you alluded to, Mr. Mayor, the GMP1 is already under construction, and that is that GMP that covers demolition, grading of the site, removal of the trees and other vegetation, and installation of the sewer system. And they've started on the sewer system right off the bat. We had to move the main
manhole because some old CenturyLink cables showed up that nobody knew about. So anyway, that's moving along very quickly and very well. We have discovered a few old foundations for houses on the site, which is kind of surprising because when we did our geotechnical analysis, we drilled 28 holes out there and never ran into a house foundation, but we have found some old ones. Those will obviously be removed prior to mass grading. Tonight on the agenda is GMP2. GMP2 basically consists of the rest of the utilities. So this will be installation of the water system, the storm drain system, including the underground storm drainage, storage facility, and ordering some long lead time street light items. So that's on tonight, and if that's approved tonight, that work will start almost immediately around 1st of August. GMP3, which includes the extension of Village Parkway to Desert Avenue, Litchfield Road improvements, the roundabout in Litchfield Road. That work will be included in GMP3, and that would be brought to the council at the September meeting. Those plans are being wrapped up now, and Aiken Gardner will be pulling together their pricing for that GMP. And then we're expecting to bring GMP4 to the council in early next year, and that will be for the park and the rest of the streets in the city center area, all the interior streets. And then there's a few things that we're going to defer until we're sure that we've got good financing in place to pay for them, such things as the clock tower and water feature and things like that in the park. So those will be covered at some point in the future under GMP 5 as financing allows. The other thing I'd like to mention is that there were a couple of newspaper articles recently that's starting to generate some calls of interest from folks. You know, some people are just interested in what's going on. Others, like real estate brokers, are interested in working with the city on the project. So yeah, the word's starting to get out there, and project's moving ahead, and I'm very excited, as you are, to see it finally get under construction. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you for your report.
Mr. Mayor, John Romack.
I would like
to ask Woody
was that a question from someone?
Yeah, this is John Romack. I'd like to ask Woody a question.
Councilman Romack.
Woody, thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Councilman.
Woody, thank you. Woody, who's making the specifications on some of this stuff? Because I know we had talked about different sort of paving on the roadways and different ideas as far as some of the grading goes. And you talk about getting streetlights ordered, things like that. But I mean, I'm not sure that I've seen or heard anything about that. It makes it really hard for me to understand how we're going to proceed if we don't know some of the specifics. And maybe I'm missing something, but can you fill me in?
Sure, Councilmember Romack. What you're not seeing is all of the engineering and the plan preparations in the background. So we have EPS Group as our main engineer on the project, and then they bring in other specialists like Wright Engineering for streetlight design, others for landscape, irrigation system design, structural engineers, you know, a whole team of engineering specialists who have been working on this project for about 1.5 years now. So what they have done, and the idea here is that we work as a team. So me as the project manager and the rest of the city staff who's been involved in the project, as well as the working group representing the city. And then we have EPS Group and their group of engineers, and then Aiken Gardner as our contractor. And we all work together as a team to produce the plans, review the plans, and make sure that we're designing what we want to have for the city center, and that Aiken Gardner is looking over our shoulder, making sure that it's done in the most cost-effective way. So they're offering suggestions on maybe use this type of material instead of what the landscape architect was specifying, because it accomplishes the same thing, but it might save some money. So you're right. All of this has been going on in the background, but we have literally dozens and dozens of pages of sheets of plans that have been approved or finalized and approved by me for the construction process.
Is it possible then for us to visit those pages and see just what we're voting on, and B, what we can anticipate is going to be installed in our city?
Sure. I've been keeping the working group apprised of some of the aesthetic aspects of the project, or some of the areas where I think it's more important for someone in a higher leadership role than me in the city, making some decisions on how to handle some of the issues. So, the working group has been involved in a lot of that, but sure, I'm glad to provide copies of plans for anybody to review.
Okay, I'll be in touch when I'm back in.
And again, we're generally following.
Let me.
We're generally following, of course, the original plan that was prepared back in 2019, but we're also following some of the design guidelines that EPS prepared early on about a year ago, or more than a year ago, that have been posted on the website and have been provided to the working group and other folks as well.
I know that we all want this to be a really nice looking, well organized.
Let me interject.
Designed. Yeah, Tom.
Let me interject just a comment. And I apologize because my internet may not be working as well as it should work, and we'll try to apprise that to Cox tomorrow. But so far, the things that have come to the council have not involved any decisions that are aesthetic in nature. So far, we've talked about putting in utilities and putting in underground stormwater retention areas and things that are mechanical in nature and that will be hidden from view in the actual development itself. As we get into GMP3 and GMP4, there will be some decisions that will need to be made that may be aesthetic in nature. There'll be less decisions to be made than what was in the original plan, because what the working group has decided and has instructed the engineer to do is, through these first 4 GMPs, to eliminate things that are not absolutely necessary to moving the project forward and that are discretionary that can be put in later. So things like the water feature is something that is very aesthetic and is also very expensive, and is something that the council will decide upon in the future. The clock tower is another example of that is a very aesthetic feature. It's all about whether you like its look or you don't like its look, and it's also very expensive. And so that has been deferred until we get down the road a bit. Probably the major issue that will need to be addressed as we go forward into 3 and 4 is whether we're going to do any special paving, whether we're going to try to put in features that look like cobblestones or whatever. So those are things that will be considered by the working group in detail, and then will be brought to council for a decision on how we go forward. So those are those items that are aesthetic in nature that are going to impact potentially the way that the feel of this downtown area. Those are things that will be coming to council in the future.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions of the city engineer concerning the city center development?
I'd like to ask just a real quick one.
I don't see any. I wanted to just add. Okay, Councilman Rainer Watson, go forth.
Sorry. Woody, I saw in your report that Southwest Gas is going to be relocating a 12-inch pipeline. Is that on Old Litchfield Road or the Litchfield bypass?
Yeah, Councilwoman Brainerd Watson, yes, that's in Litchfield Road, Litchfield bypass. If you may remember about a year and a half ago, the Litchfield Road down through Goodyear was under construction for a long time, and that's what that was. That was Southwest Gas installing the southern portion of that 12-inch gas main. So now they're starting on a project to extend that to the north all the way up to Waddell Road, about 9 miles. We have worked very closely with them and coordinated our schedules very closely. They will be starting their project in Litchfield Park, in Litchfield Road, around the 1st of November. They will then finish up, if they don't have any snafus during construction, they'll finish up probably around January 1st. And then Aiken Gardner will immediately move into Litchfield Road to start demolition and reconstruction of Litchfield Road to install the roundabout and the other street improvements.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, I wanted to just
Mr. Mayor,
add
Vice
one
Mayor.
thing to the report. Go ahead, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Lisa, that the pipeline that exists now is the one that runs behind the apartments on Litchfield Road, runs right in front. I think it's the rec center, and then runs down behind the houses. It's in the cart path behind the houses that face onto Litchfield Road, which
Okay.
kind of is basically to the west of the old Litchfield Road alignment. And I think, Woody, correct me if I'm wrong, but that pipeline's going to go away, and that's all going to get moved out of the city and get moved over into new Litchfield Road, Litchfield bypass.
Mr. Vice Mayor, I wish I could tell you that, but Southwest Gas has not indicated that to us. If you remember, I think we discussed this with council, maybe it was a couple of years ago, that was their original plan, was to replace that pipe with a new one in the same alignment. They're basically the Desert Avenue alignment. They have apparently since changed their plans, and they are keeping that, for now anyway, they're keeping that old pipeline in service and then adding this 12-inch main to provide service for all of the new development that's occurring north and west of us.
Does that mess up any of the city center planning?
No, it doesn't. We potholed that pipeline very early in the project to find out exactly how deep it was. And fortunately, it was deep enough that we didn't have to work around it or even deepen it or relocate it. So we're not touching that pipeline. It's still going to stay where it is, and we're going to build a street over it.
So we'll have two high pressure lines, one on the Desert Avenue alignment and one in the bypass.
That's correct.
Okay.
For the
Woody,
time
if
being,
you could,
for the time being, anyway. I can tell you that Southwest Gas is very diligent about testing that pipe. They have, over the last couple of years, they've gone in and done extensive potholing and drilling down to the top of the pipe to check on soil conditions and also the condition of the pipe itself. So they're paying attention to it and taking care of it, but they haven't indicated to me that it's going away at any point.
Just, my perspective is if there would be any way of them abandoning the high pressure one that runs through the community and skirted around the community, I'd feel better about that. But obviously, we kind of are left with what they decide to do.
Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, then we will move on to the next items. We have on our agenda the crane plume. You have the materials for the crane plume in your packet. It does not appear significant has changed in the crane plume over the last month. And again, Mr. City Manager, we need to be talking with Avondale about whether we need to continue the expense of the level of monitoring that Avondale and Litchfield is paying on that process, since it seems to have stabilized from what it was several years ago.
Yes, sir,
Takes
Mr.
us to
Mayor.
the consent agenda, item 9.
I'm sorry, sir. I was
Item
going to take.
9A through. I'm having trouble hearing you, Matthew. Maybe, and I may be the only one. So.
I'm sorry, sir. What I was going to say is that we actually met with Avondale on that issue this week about the crane plume, and they've asked for a couple of weeks to consider their options on what they want to do going forward. And we'll come back to you guys once they let us know their decision on that. But we did meet with Avondale this week on that issue.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, sir.
Then we'll go on to the consent agenda, item 9A through H. Is there anyone on the council who would like to take any item off of the consent agenda? Okay, I don't see any indication of any items. So is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda, item 9A through H?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion by Councilman Clare.
I'll
Is there a
second it. Brainerd Watson seconded.
Seconded by Councilman Brainerd Watson. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye or saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, are there any opposed? Okay, the motion is adopted. The consent agenda is adopted. Items 9A through H. Takes us now to our business section, which starts with the petition to form a community facilities district. Mr. Williams.
Yes, sir, Mayor and Council. There are 3 steps for forming the CFD in the bond. This is the first step. We are required to submit a petition to form a CFD. That's what this is. It's basically a preliminary step we were required to do, just saying that we want to move forward with forming a CFD. That's basically what this is. As you know, the city owns 100% of the city center property, so that makes this process much simpler. You will see in a few minutes, we'll be tabling the next item, which is actually the CFD resolution to form the CFD. We're doing that because of the legal description. You will see that item come to you in September. You will also see the actual bond documents come to you in September, but tonight's motion to move forward with the finance process, if that makes sense. But again, this is just a very preliminary step just to move forward with getting the CFD formed, basically. Also, the city attorney will be providing the exact wording for the motion on this item. Any questions as to what a CFD is or how it operates? I do have a presentation tonight for the finance portion.
Are there any questions from council concerning the petition to form the CFD? Okay, do not see any. Mr. Estes, do you have a form of motion that we need to consider?
Yes, Mayor, thank you very much. And just as a little bit of background there, the attached petition that's included with the packet will be amended slightly to account for the correction of the legal description and the acreage area. Instead of the 12.2 acres, it'll be the 29.48 acres with a correct legal description. So I'm requesting that the motion be to authorize the city manager to sign and submit a petition to form the Litchfield Square Community Facilities District in substantially the form attached to the council agenda, to include an updated legal description of the district area.
Is someone on the council willing to make that motion?
So moved.
Okay, that's been moved by Councilman Brainerd Watson. Is there a second?
I second.
Looks like second by Councilman Clare was the first one I saw. Are there any questions or any discussion concerning the petition to form the CFD? Seeing none, all those in favor of presenting the petition to form the CFD in accordance with the motion made, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please signify by saying nay. I see no nays, so the motion is passed unanimously. Next item on the council agenda is the resolution. And that resolution will be postponed until a consideration in September so that we can get the legal description confirmed exactly. Next item on the agenda is Litchfield Square bond financing. Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and council, this motion is to move forward with the financing. Again, the actual bond documents will come to you in September. The reason why is it takes, of course, time and work, as you can imagine, to prepare the bond documents to put it out. So this motion, if approved, will direct, of course, city staff and our bond attorney to do just that, to bring these documents for your approval in September. If they are approved, the financing would be available in early October. I do have a presentation for this item. 1 second. Can you all see the presentation? Okay,
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor and council, some of this information you've seen before, but I thought it was important to go over it again as some of the information has changed. Again, Litchfield Square basics. As you know, it's 30 acres with roughly 12 developable acres. We purchased the properties for a little over $5 million. We estimate the sale of those parcels at 7.2. We're planning for 26 million in infrastructure. I'll break that more down in some other slides. Eventually $26 million in parking decks as needed. We're certainly not there yet. And we project $2 million in annual estimated sales tax revenue. That is, of course, upon build out of all 6 parcels. This is the breakdown on the GMPs. GMP 1, which is the one you see ongoing now, as you said, it's great to see this project underway and see some progress being made. GMP 1 was 3.6 million. GMP 2, which is on the agenda tonight for approval, is for 2.7 million. GMP 3 is 8.6. GMP 4, 6.1. GMP 5 is 5 million. GMP 1 through 4 will be paid by city financing and by bond financing. GMP 5, as you see, it says remaining streets or parks will be added as the parcels develop. These are some of the extras the mayor was speaking about, different elements that we can add in as the parcels develop and go along. That's why we broke it out this way. And of course, the total there is $26 million. Any questions on the GMP cost? Okay.
Let me just make a comment at this point, Mr. City Manager.
Yes, sir.
The issue of the cost of these GMPs has been of great concern to me because if we get the cost of this thing to the point where we've built a Taj Mahal, we're going to have difficulty having a sustainable business base that's able to locate within the center. So we have, on the city manager's working group, one of the things that we have spent a lot of time on is what can we do to try to keep the cost down to something that's as reasonable as possible. And we spent a significant amount of time looking at various features within this this infrastructure plan. One that was a bit contentious for a while was the centralized stormwater runoff system that had been designed. That at the end of the day, we all agreed that it was a good idea and that was probably the most cost-effective manner to go forward. But with doing that, we also decided that we were going to add in a way to recover some of the costs of that, if not all of the cost of it, as part of the development process. So what I just want to assure the council is that every item within these first 4 GMPs have been scrubbed very carefully to eliminate anything that's not necessary to get this project off the ground and get people to start buying parcels and developing buildings. Once it becomes as successful as we all believe it will be, then we'll look in GMP 5 to add some of the Cadillac items that will make it a very special development, but items that are not necessary from the this immediate plan. By changing these GMPs around slightly and going and putting all of the extra items in number 5, we've been able to reduce the bond financing need from a $21 or $22 million bond down to $15 million, with the remainder of the money needed to finish this development either coming from current reserves or coming from additional reserves that will be generated as we go forward, both from our normal budget surplus between receipts and operating costs, or from the sale of lots or parcels in the city center. So I want to assure the council that the city manager working group spent a significant amount of time trying to make sure that these GMPs made sense and that the bond financing made sense in a manner that would allow this project to be successful going on, on an ongoing basis. So are there
Mayor?
any questions? Are there any questions? Yes.
Yeah, I
Who's
have a
this?
question. This
Councilman-
is Ann Donahue. So are the Cadillac, are the Cadillac items in GMP 5 or are they in addition to this?
No, they're basically in GMP 5. And by Cadillac items, I mean things like $1.4 million for the water feature, or $450,000 for the clock tower. There's very expensive items that have been put into GMP 5. So who's the from?
So that's from me.
So anyway, yes, the answer to you, Councilwoman, the extra items are in there so that we can go through and get this development to the point where we can reasonably expect to start selling parcels. And then as we sell those parcels and buildings are being built, we'll generate additional funds that can be invested into some of the extra items, and make sure that the concept was to make sure that this bond was at a level that the city could afford to carry it without having to eliminate its CIP program, because we have ongoing needs in CIP for our streets and our parks and other things that our residents depend upon. So we wanted to try to balance the cash flow requirements from this bond, because the city is going to have to carry the bond for potentially a significant period of time, depending upon how quickly this thing develops. So both of those things, I believe, are met in the plan that's been brought to you tonight.
And one additional question, is this sort of ballpark of what we've been looking at for the last couple of years in the working group in regards to total cost of this project? Or is this more or less?
I would say that it's the ballpark increased by the reality of what it costs to build today. So the ballpark has gotten more expensive, but the items within the ballpark haven't necessarily changed very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Okay, Mr. Williams, do you have anything further in your presentation?
Yes, sir, I do. Thank you, Mayor. Infrastructure financing. As the mayor said, we'd be looking to pay for 15 million of this project with city tax revenue bonds. These bonds will be paid back through the Litchfield Square CFD, which we'll be creating. The city would pay 5 to 6 million of our own funds for the Litchfield Square Park and Litchfield Square utilities. As a reminder, we do have an existing bond of 3.3 million from 2015. We could refinance that bond for a savings of $119,000, and you will see those numbers shortly. The city center bond would be a 30-year bond at 2.99. You'll see the numbers shortly. For the principal amount and premium, in for a total of 15,319,000. Here's the actual payment schedule. I'll break it down by sections in just a second. Column 3, where you see the 333, 332, that is the existing bond that we had from before. Column 6 is the payments on the 15 million on the city center bond. As you see, first year 433, for several years 520, several years in the 570s, and after that in the low 9s. Column 7 is the total debt service. That's between column 3 and column 5 together. But again, column 3 goes away. Obviously, the numbers for City Center Financing are only for column 6. They don't include the bond from previous bond because we already have that debt. So we want to make sure that we separate between the existing bond and the CFD financing, if that makes sense. Some more breakdown on those. We'd be making interest-only payments of $520,000.
Maybe just 1 second.
Yes, sir, of course. Want to go back?
Before you go back, we'll go back 1 slide.
Yes, sir.
The thing that's really important for our city budget is the total aggregate debt service, which is the last column. And by keeping this bond to that $15 million number, what happens is that total aggregate debt service ends up always being less than $1 million. And the reason why is important is that we currently generate between our normal operating expenses, including things like the rec, if you look at all of our operating expenses, versus what we have coming in on a normalized basis from our businesses, we have an excess between those two of way more than $1 million. It probably is closer to $2 million a year. So if we got in a situation where we could not get this bond, the cost of the bond being covered by the CFD, so because the development was not successful, we weren't selling property, we weren't getting enough businesses in that area, our city budget can carry this without having a situation where we don't have the money to go and do the things we need to do for things like streets and parks in a normal way, so that our residents' lifestyle is impacted. So I think it's critical that we keep that aggregate debt service below $1 million. And this plan does that. It is also important for the council to understand that as we go forward, we have not finalized, and we probably won't finalize an exact plan for how the CFD is going to start being able to pay some of this debt service. Because the CFD as an entity, we cannot cap what the CFD tax rates are in the same way that this was possible when we have a private developer. So that means that we have to make sure that as we transfer debt service to the CFD, that we do it in conjunction with the actual valuation of the property in the CFD going up, so the tax rates stay reasonable. So that is going to impact how we go about transferring these facilities, this infrastructure to the CFD itself. And it could easily be that we would not be able to transfer any infrastructure for several years until we get 30 or 40% of this development built. At that point, we might be able to transfer 30 or 40% of the infrastructure and then have the CFD do a bond that would cover that and that would cover these debt service, a portion of these debt service payments. But it's going to be a process that's going to go on, and it's going to be dependent upon how quickly the parcels are developed, how quickly the development is successful, and what the actual assessed valuation is of the buildings that are built in this development. So it is critical that we make this plan one in which we are not forced to make these decisions too quickly and thereby impact the long-term sustainability of the businesses in the CFD. So this debt structure that's being presented to you is one that is very reasonable for Litchfield Park to be able to deal with without any new revenue from this development. So I think it's important that the council understand this as we move down this path, understand that we're taking on additional responsibility, but we've been very careful in the way that we're taking it on. And it should fit within our budget in a way that is responsible to the residents, to all the residents that are here, depending upon the lifestyle of our city. So, if there are any questions, if not, then we'll have Mr. Williams continue.
For your basic payment schedule, again, interest-only payments of $520,000 for first 5 years. You will notice my asterisk there. When I use these numbers, that's the highest payment of that segment of years. They vary a little bit from year to year, but I'll always give you worst case scenario. So $520,000 a year for the first 5 years, $580,000 a year for the next 4 years after that. And for the full amount, $912,000 for the next 21 years, for a total repayment of $23 million. Again, that's only the city center money. That doesn't include the existing bond refinance. And I want to keep those numbers separate because we're already paying that debt. And the total debt, including the existing bond, would be $26 million. Any questions on those on that breakdown?
Matthew,
Yes, sir.
so the 23 million repayment is on the 15 million number?
That's correct, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other questions on this slide? Okay. Again, some CFD property tax comparisons. As you know, the city has no property tax. The CFD established would be on the city center properties only. It does not create a city center or property tax citywide, again, only on city center. The CFD would exist until the bond is paid in full. We would include an O&M fee, operations and maintenance of 30 cents per, that would exist in perpetuity. That would help pay for public works, for grass maintenance for workers. We estimate that at about $260,000 a year. So that would help do the maintenance of city center long-term for our staff. If the CFD was assessed as follows, if we did it on 20 million, that would be $1.82 per 100 or $364 per square foot. If we did it on 26 million, it would be $227 per 100 or $454 per square foot. I show that to you both ways because it depends how much we charge the CFD. As the mayor said, we may pay for some of those extras for the clock tower, the signs, et cetera, with additional sales tax revenue from city center in the future. We may not charge that to the CFD because that will directly affect what the CFD pays. And again, we want to keep this project marketable. You'll see on the right-hand side property tax comparisons from other cities in the valley. Again, we have no city property tax. So let's compare that 20 million, that $1.82. At 20 million, that $1.82 is pretty close, as you'll see there with Buckeye, Glendale. It's a little higher than Goodyear, but it is cheaper than some others. However, if you do the full amount on the 26 million, it's a good bit more. At that one, the only one that would be higher would be the city of Tempe. So I think it's important to have that comparison because that's one of the biggest selling points for this project is that yes, developers will pay a CFD tax. However, they pay no city property tax. Instead, they're going to pay this. And if they were in another city, they'd be paying comparable numbers. So in my opinion, that's a very strong selling point of this project. Again, it will range depending on how much we charge the CFD. Any questions on this slide? Okay. The sale
Sorry,
parcels
Matthew.
is- Yes, sir,
Matthew,
I'll
I'm
go back.
sorry. One quick question.
Yes,
So the
sir.
30 cents is in addition to the CFD assessment?
The 30 cents is included in that $1.82 or $2.27, sir.
So in reality, the tax is a $1.52 on 20 million.
Without the O&M, yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other questions on this slide? Okay. Again, this one is review. The city center parcels cannot be sold for less than FMV, fair market value. A bidding process is required, again, with FMV being the minimum bid. If any of the parcels go over 1.5 million bid, an election is required to approve sale of those parcels. There's nothing we can do about that. If that's what they get bid for, it's what they get bid for, it triggers an election. We will have an evaluation committee that will score the bids based on various factors such as design, feasibility, developer qualifications, and of course, conformity to city standards. It won't just be, can you afford to build the project, but various things get figured into this. Also, the buildings will be modeled, and you guys know this, in the style of the Wigwam, the church at Litchfield Park, and Litchfield Elementary. You may have seen there was recently an article in the West Valley View about that, about the style these buildings would be in. And that's important to understand. These buildings will blend in Litchfield Park. They'll be built in the style of what makes us what we are. So that's very important for our citizens to understand. Any questions here? Payment scenario. I had Paige run a worst case scenario. The mayor's honestly, he's already covered this. But as the mayor said, we ran these numbers, absolute worst case scenario. If no parcels sold, if no sales tax revenues come in from City Center, we can still pay for this bond out of CIP money and still be fine. We can still do that and never touch operations. No effect on city operations. It could reduce our CIP projects, don't get me wrong, but it would not affect our general city operations or our staff. And that's a great thing to be able to say that we could do that. I'll give you just a second on this one. I do have a summary of this slide on the next one. Again, we don't think this will happen. This is worst case scenario. We want to show you again that if nothing sold, if no money came in, that we would still be able to cover it with extra money, with CIP money, and be okay. Any questions here? Okay. Summary of this slide, as I said, that slide is absolutely the worst case scenario. If revenues decline 24%, no recovery until 25, again, we don't think that'll happen. No sales tax, no land sales from the city center. Again, we could cover it out of CIP projects. As the mayor said, the working group has worked hard to get this to where it is today. There's been a lot of thought and debate that's went into this to get these numbers where they are. City cash position, again, we had 15 million cash on hand, 5 million city center contribution. That would take us to 20 million. Of course, 15 and 5 is 20. And we're required to have 4.5 million city reserve. That leaves us with $5.5 million balance. And that would cover us for 11 years of bond payments with $0 from land sales or Litchfield Square sales tax. Staff recommendation. Number one, establish the CFD. You will see that on September council agenda. The city commit to $5 or $6 million of our own money, as we've already discussed. City council to approve the sale of $13 million in bonds. That is this motion on this item. Again, the actual bond documents will come for your approval in September council meeting. We will prepare the parcels to receive bids. As you know, the groundbreaking is scheduled for September the 15th. We anticipate construction of buildings to begin by June of 2022. First bond payment of $433,000 is due in July of 22. We anticipate build out of Litchfield Square by 2028, and we expect $2 million in annual sales tax revenues by 2029. Again, parking surcharges would be in addition to that if we choose to go that route. Any questions on our next steps? If there are no more questions, of course, we have the disclosure from Stifel. We do have our bond attorneys on the call with us if there were any questions here as far as the financing, they are here. If you guys have any questions that we can't answer. If there are no others though, that is my presentation. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the council?
Actually, this is Ann, not a question. I just want to say that was a great presentation, Matthew. I think you did a really good job that appeared to be very complicated, but thank you for simplifying it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Looks like we lost the mayor.
Yes, it does.
He's still on there. His picture's gone. I think he froze up for a second. There
Any
we go.
questions on any of that while we're waiting?
You're muted, Mayor.
I'm trying to get unmuted. This has been a very bad experience with streaming tonight. So I'm not sure where we left off. I know that Councilman Donahue had a question, and when she started asking the question, my internet went out, said it was not only unstable, it wasn't going to work at all. So Councilman Donahue, did you get your question answered?
Yes, it was not a question. It was just a compliment to Matthew.
Okay, good. Are there any other questions or comments that from council? Okay, if not, then is there a motion to authorize the execution and delivery of the city's excise tax revenue obligations in an amount to provide net proceeds of $15 million?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Clare, seconded by Vice Mayor. Is there any further discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 You have to unmute yourselves. Okay.
Aye.
All right, all those who are unmuted, are there any nays? Any nays? All right, the motion's approved. We'll go on to the shared parking agreement with the church and at Staggs Park.
Mr. Mayor, this is John Romack. I have to recuse myself from this discussion. I will be still on the line and available if you have any direct questions.
All right, thank you, Councilman. Mr. Williams, do you have, no, it's actually Mr. Scouten. Do you have a presentation or on this item?
Yes, Mayor, I'll just give you a brief background and tell you a little bit more about this agreement. So about a year ago, when we were implementing the no parking zones on Old Litchfield Road, we were thinking about additional parking for Staggs Park. We were directed to begin discussions with St. Peter's about sharing parking. They had expressed an interest in having some additional parking. So I've been working with Councilmember Romack as a representative of the church for the last several months to reach this agreement and also to come up with a conceptual plan for the parking lot. And both of them have gone through several iterations. The last plan or the latest plan for the parking lot is shown as the attachment to the council communication, which should be in your packet. But let me run through the agreement highlight just real quickly. So the city will design and construct the parking lot, and it will be mostly located on Staggs Park property. About 10 feet of it will be located on church property adjacent to it. It would create about 17 new parking spaces, and both church visitors and church officials could use those spaces, as well as Staggs Park visitors could utilize spaces in the church parking lot, the existing parking lot. Because all of the traffic that's using Staggs Park and maybe entering the church parking lot will be exiting out to Desert Avenue. The city will be, has agreed to put a surface sealer over that part of the church's parking lot that's going to get the extra traffic about every 6 years. Should major maintenance be required, meaning actual removal and replacement of the asphalt pavement in the new Staggs Park parking lot, I'm sorry, in the church's parking lot, the city would agree to participate in that on an equal share once we consulted with the church and agreed that the pavement needs to be replaced. And that obviously would be several years down the road. It also talks about an easement to allow legal egress from the church parking lot to Desert Avenue. Because the dumpsters that are in the way now would have to be moved. We will add a trash receptacle, trash enclosure at the end of the new parking lot. Church would be responsible for maintaining that. Otherwise, both the church and the city are responsible for maintaining their own parking lots. And then it has a provision for termination if necessary. Otherwise, it's a perpetual agreement. Staff felt that there should probably be a sharing of the replacement of, ultimately the replacement of the pavement in the Staggs Park parking lot, which the church would participate in on an equal share. That's not in the agreement. That's not how it was negotiated, but we believe that that should be in the agreement just to make it fair for all parties involved. And staff recommends that the agreement be amended to include that. This project's in the capital budget for about $175,000 with some of the things that we've added that we might be a little short in the long run, but we'll update that cost estimate if this agreement is approved and we move forward with final design. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, just a comment to make sure that we're all on the same page before I open this up for general questions. This vote tonight to approve this agreement does not approve putting the parking lot in on any particular timeline. It will be part of our CIP list, and we will make a decision as we go forward on prioritizing that list. And it will be built whenever the council as a group decides it becomes one of the items that is of a high enough priority that it will consume some of our CIP budget in a particular year. So just so that there's no misunderstanding about what this agreement does, it doesn't commit us to construct this within any particular fiscal year of the city. So are there any questions or comments from council on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Yes, please. Is this Councilman Clare?
Yes, sir. So on the staff recommendation, the paragraph 3.5, had just for clarity's sake, have we already presented that to the church officials? Have they given us any feedback on that, whether that's acceptable to them?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Clare, no, we have not done that. Obviously, Councilmember Romack is aware of it at this time, but no, the answer is no.
Thank you.
One note on that, the Board of Trustees at the church and the diocese, I think I'm pronouncing that right, approved it without that amendment. So with this amendment, it wouldn't need to go back to the Board of Trustees and also to the diocese of the state of the Church of Arizona to approve that.
Yeah, are there any other questions or comments from council? Mr. Vice Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I brought this up in the past. Do we know for sure, since that baseball diamond is going to be pointed at this new parking lot, that we're not setting up a dangerous situation with baseballs hitting cars and getting that far?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, we did design the lot so that the cars would be as far south as possible, meaning they'd be as far away from the baseball diamond as possible. But yeah, I mean, for typical little leaguers who might be using that field, they're not going to be able to hit it that far. But, you know, if Saturday afternoon you get a big guy out there showing off to his girlfriend, it's possible. I also did check after your previous comment, I did check to make sure that a youth soccer league, and I think it's 9-11, is that ages 9 to 11 soccer league? Anyway, the field for youth soccer league would still comfortably fit in the park with this parking lot in place.
Woody, do we know, at LES, they've got a home run fence around the large diamond. Do we know that distance from the backstop, that home run fence would fit in this park without getting into the parking lot?
The answer to that is it depends on how you classify the field. If you classify it as a little league field, the fence only needs to be 200 feet from home plate, which would easily fit. When you start going beyond that, you're going to reach a point where the home run fence will, be right at the parking lot.
But just thinking about what we already have at LES, which is where most of our activity is up to 12-year-olds, that would fit in this park still.
That's correct.
And the other comment I've got, if this is $200,000 or less to do this parking lot, do we want to have a conversation in the near future as to allocating those funds, or when we think we should allocate them?
You kind of cut out.
We will have discussions as we go forward on allocating CIP.
Okay. Is all the design done for this? Does Woody need to write specs and stuff still for the pavement and the substrata or whatever for this still, or is it ready to go and construct?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor,
No. It is not.
We're only at the conceptual / preliminary engineering stage. We've laid it out in enough detail that we know it will work from a vehicle standpoint. Vehicles can park, move around, and so on. But we still have to figure out drainage and how is this going to impact the existing trees that are there? Do we need to try to work around those? All of that would be done in final design, and we have not addressed those kind of questions yet.
So my screen says that Mr. Skelton is speaking, but I cannot hear anything from him.
Well, Mayor, I can assure you that I was making noise.
Yeah, I heard it. He answered my question.
The mayor just has a huge delay, like a 2-minute delay.
I don't know if everyone's having this problem, but if they are, Miss City Clerk, this situation tonight is not acceptable. I can't, I can't hear people speaking, they cut in and out, and in most cases, there are no pictures from anyone. There's just people's names at best, so.
I'm not.
Mayor,
having
Vice Mayor.
issues.
I'm getting everybody's response back almost immediately, Mayor.
Right.
The trouble seems to be coming on your end, wherever you're hooked up at.
I agree. And a lot of us aren't on video.
Well, I'll have to deal with Cox. No, this should not be a problem to be doing this tonight. And I checked my internet and its speeds are at normal levels. I never have this kind of problem. But we'll try to make through it. Mr. Vice Mayor, did you get your answers from the city engineer?
Yes, I did, Mayor. Very good. Thank you.
All right. Does anyone else on the council have any questions or comments? If not, is there a motion to approve the agreement as presented by the staff on the location of a parking lot in Staggs Park?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Councilman Donahue, seconded by Councilman Brenner Watson. Any further discussion?
Vice Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Vice Mayor.
There was an amendment in there that I missed somewhere. Is that included in the motion?
Yes, it's as it's presented by staff, it's adding a new section or paragraph 3.5.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion is adopted. Next item is approval of GMP 2, Mr. Scouten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is GMP number 2, which will, for the city center, Litchfield Square infrastructure construction, which will basically install all the rest of the underground utilities. Under GMP 1, we're currently working on the sewer. Under GMP 2, this item, we would be completing the water system and then all the other so-called dry utilities, power, telecommunications, natural gas, the storm drains, and the underground stormwater retention facilities. The proposal is for a total amount of $2,653,139.35. In your packet, another thing that this GMP will do is order the street lights, which take quite a while to produce for some reason. In your packet in the council communication, I gave a breakdown of the actual direct costs plus the contractor's markups. And then for this GMP, right now we have about $318,000 in contingencies. And then we also have about $41,000 in allowances. And the contingencies, once we get out of the ground and start working on streets and sidewalks and things like that, these contingency items will go down because there's potentially, as we've already found, there are things underground that we're discovering. But I'm hoping that these very, very little of this contingency will actually be needed, which will save us some money. Anyway, I think that's all I have to say. And I'll, as I mentioned earlier, Aiken Gardner, if this is approved, will start almost immediately on the project, and they'll just blend it into the work that they're already doing. This scope of work is scheduled to be completed around Christmas. So with that, I'll just ask for any questions.
I just have one question, Mr. Scouten, and that is, I think I saw within this breakdown that there's another mobilization charge, and I'm curious if they're already mobilized on our site and they're going to blend this right in with what they're doing on GMP 1. Why are we paying another mobilization?
They will probably double up on equipment. For example, they have the equipment out there already working on the sewer system. If this GMP is approved, they'll be bringing in additional equipment to start working on the water system and also the dry utility. So it's just additional equipment that's being brought onto the site.
Are we going to get some sort of a breakdown on that so that we have a way to audit that there's actually a mobilization going on and they're not simply using the same equipment that we've already paid to move there?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, as a part of the pay applications that Aiken Gardner is submitting to us, they have a complete breakdown of all of the materials and supplies and equipment that they're using on the project. So yes, we will be checking that.
All right. Questions from council? Questions or comments?
I have a question.
Councilman Clare, please go ahead.
With them being able, Woody, with them being able to work concurrently within the GMPs, shouldn't there be some savings if they initially were bid out as individual projects where they're able to actually coincide the work at the same time?
Yeah, and the answer is yes. And the way that is worked into these GMPs is that there are, things like they call general conditions. So site superintendent, project engineer, project manager, the trailer costs, the site fencing, the control of dust and stormwater runoff from the site. All of that is put in each GMP for the length of time that GMP will be requiring those items, but where there is overlap, those items are reduced accordingly. So the overlap is reduced in the things like the general conditions.
So with that, we should have an expectation of a potential savings in certain line items off each individual GMP because of the concurrent work.
Well, those savings are already accounted for in this second GMP. So this GMP. Let me explain it this way. This GMP basically takes 5 months to construct, but we're only paying for about 2.5 months of some of those general conditions because they're overlapping with the general condition items that are in GMP 1. And those are things that I review and check before I present these GMPs to you.
Thank you, sir.
I will mention, and I think I'll stress this again, that I think there is quite a bit of money in both of these GMPs for allowances. And those are items that, like street cleaning, maintenance of the stormwater protection system around the site that just, you can't estimate those. Potholing, you can't estimate those very closely at the beginning of the project because you don't know how much rain we're going to get. So how often are they going to have to actually sweep the streets to keep the mud off the streets, so things like that. So what we do in these GMPs is we put in these allowances, but then chances are very good that we'll never use the whole amount.
Thank you again, Woody.
Mm-hmm. Welcome.
Any other questions or comments from council? I thought I had someone else who would also come in at the same time as Councilman Clare.
Vice Mayor.
Hello, Mr. Vice Mayor. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Woody, you mentioned you wanted to order these street lights, and there were some previous conversations about the aesthetics and the design of what the project's going to look like. Are you ordering street lights that are similar to the acorns in the villages or the ones we put in a few years back on the east side of Litchfield Bypass? I mean, that's a pretty important design feature, I think. What are we getting?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, that was an item that was discussed with the working group. We originally started out with some more contemporary style street lights that would be owned and maintained by the city. Through the working group discussion process, we decided that it was more cost effective for the city to utilize APS standard lights, so that APS would be responsible for the maintenance and we just pay our monthly fee for each light. So with that decision, though, we're limited as to what designs we can utilize for streetlights. And the working group decided to utilize it's called the transit style, which is what we currently have on Wigwam Boulevard and Old Litchfield Road. So we're going to match those streetlights.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? If not, is there a motion to approve GMP2 as presented by Aiken Gardner and staff for the city center project in an amount not to exceed $2,653,169.35?
So moved.
I'll make the
So
motion.
moved.
Moved by Councilman Brainerd Watson, seconded by Councilman Clare. Any further discussion by council? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes. That was the smoothest item we've had on the agenda for me tonight. So I don't know what changed other than the internet got scared. I was getting mad. So we'll go to the last item, and that is the Street Light Improvement District Slids 1, 2, and 3. Establishing the ad valorem tax levy for fiscal year 2022. Ms. Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I don't have anything to present. All of the details are included in your packet, but just a very brief discussion is this resolution will set the ad valorem tax levy for Slids 1, 2, and 3, and it will allow Maricopa County to add this to the tax bill so we generate enough revenue to pay the lighting bills. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are these the final rates as established by the assessor with the correct assessed evaluations?
That's correct. I do have an estimate based on their preliminary assessed valuation, but Maricopa County will they will do the final calculation.
So these may be adjusted, correct?
Correct. They might be adjusted slightly, and we do document that these rates will be finalized when their final valuations come out in August.
And that's based on the levies that we're going to set tonight, correct?
Correct. The levy won't change, but the rate might be adjusted slightly to collect the levy that's been set.
All right. Questions from council? Questions or comments? All right. Seeing none, is a motion to adopt resolution 21-496 to set the ad valorem tax levy as presented in your packets for fiscal year 2022 for Slids 1, 2, and 3?
So moved.
Motion by Councilman Donahue. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by the Vice Mayor. Any further discussion from council? All those in favor of establishing the ad valorem tax levy for Slids 1, 2, and 3, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion to adopt the resolution is adopted. I don't believe we have any need for an executive session. Mr. Estes, correct?
That is correct, Mayor.
Okay, then is there a motion to adjourn?
Mayor, can I just, one thing?
Yes. Sure, Councilman.
If someone's going to be speaking to Cox, would you ask them if there's a way of utilizing cell phones for audio or video and a computer for the other, and if that would improve things? I've heard of people doing that, and I don't know how you do it, but if they can give us some input on that, maybe that'll make it a little bit less of a drag on the Cox system.
That's a good idea. We're going to ask the city clerk to contact Cox and also Zoom to see what may have caused these unusual issues tonight. Because I actually do, I use Zoom meetings all the time. I've never had a experience quite like this evening's. So
And, okay, Mayor, I'm just gonna ask this question because you're my neighbor. Are you at home?
I am.
Oh, okay, because I, as you know, I've had to go to Councilman Claire's house before, 2 doors down. But so far I was good tonight, but I heavily dislike, I'm not gonna use the H word, I'll heavily dislike Cox. But anyway.
Well, Mr. Clear may be hosting all three of us.
Mayor,
Okay, yes.
for what it's worth, I was going through the exact same problems with Cox. And somewhere in the near distant past, they apparently changed from a 4.0 to a 4.1 something system. And I had to buy a new router. And the new router solved massive amounts of problems.
Really? You needed a new router? Because I mean, I actually,
Yeah,
you have a
my
Nest.
router was only 3 years old, 4 years old. But there's been a change of some sort. And I went and bought the newest and greatest and latest because I was having the exact same problems. And it solved all my problems with Zoom meetings and calls and stuff.
Do you have a Nest system?
No, I have
Just
a
one.
router, and then I have a additional a second piece of equipment on the other end of the house that also broadcasts. And so
Yeah,
I can select which one I hook into.
Huh. I have a Nest system that has four nests, so I don't have much space to be covered. But I'll check on that to see if it covers this 4.1 system. Okay, with that, I think we have we had a vote, Ms. City? We have not had a vote yet, so we're not adjourned. Okay, is there a motion? Do we have a motion? Ms.
So
City?
moved.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved by multiple people, seconded by Councilman Clare. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you for your attention this evening. Apologize.
Mayor, we have a CFD meeting.
Oh, yes. Hopefully Cox will Cox make it through another meeting. I don't know. Let me see if I have an agenda. Okay, so we'll call the meeting of the Village of Litchfield Park Community Facilities District to order. We've already had a pledge of allegiance, so we're going to go to the consent agenda. First item is item 3.1, which is approval of the minutes. Is there anyone who wishes to take this item off of the consent agenda? If not, is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda? Moved by Councilman Clare, seconded by
Vice Mayor.
by the Vice Mayor. All right, is there any further discussion concern? Well, there's no discussion, it's consent. All those in favor of adopting consent, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Any opposed? All right, consent agenda is adopted. The only item of business is a discussion to adopt resolution CFD 21-42, setting the ad valorem tax levy for fiscal year 2022 for the Village at Litchfield Park CFD in the amount of $363,650 and authorizing Maricopa County to calculate the final rate per hundred of assessed value. Is there any discussion concerning this item? Is there a motion to adopt the item?
So moved.
Claire, seconded by Councilman Watson. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adopting the ad valorem tax levy for the city or for the village at Litchfield Park CFD, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is adopted. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting, the CFD meeting?
So moved.
Moved
So
by
moved.
Councilman Watson, seconded by Vice Mayor. Any discussion? All those in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned, and I think this is the last meeting we have for this evening.
It is. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you for everyone for your attention. We appreciate it. We got a lot of important business done tonight, actually, between the bond resolution and the GMP2. So thank you very much for your attention. Have a good evening, and say hi to Sunny. Sunny, you're still with us. I can see your
Yes,
picture.
sir.
Good to see you,
Still
buddy.
there. Good to see
All
you.
right.